First of all, I would like to welcome our chief guest and distinguished members of the panel, Dr. Shankar Sharma and Dr. Arju Rana Deva. Today we have chief guest and keynote speaker, Mr. Gopal Krishna Agrawal. He is national spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party on economic affairs. Uh, Today we are going to discuss on post-COVID economic restoration, how India and Nepal can work together to revive the economy that is shattered by the COVID-19. And just today, the World Bank has released its publication and it has said that it is the worst recession after World War II. With this, I would like to begin our meeting. First of all, I would like to request uh, our chief guest for his keynote remarks. Sir, it's an honor to have you here in this meeting, and I would like to uh, to request you for the keynote speech, focusing on stabilizing Indian economy. The Indian government, Modi government, has just unveiled 20 lakh crore Indian rupees stimulus package, and there are lots of COVID-19 response program after this pandemic. Sir, now I would like to request you to start the keynote speech. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Pushparaj Acharya ji. I would like to extend my greetings to Dr. Arzu Ranadi and Dr. Shankar Sharma ji and other distinguished guests in this webinar, and all my friends from Nepal and India who have joined this webinar on discussing the roadmap ahead post-COVID India-Nepal socio-economic scenario. And I would also like to extend my thanks to Mr. Sareen Gimbriji and all the organizers of this panel. Thank them for giving me this opportunity of interactions. Pushpaji, how much time do I have?
Yes, sir. You have 10 minutes, sir.
10 minutes. Okay. I would just like to open with my remarks that currently the whole world is facing this whole crisis, and every country is looking for an exit route and how to revive the economy after the healthcare. The most important factor that everybody has in mind is how to revive our economy in future and how to move ahead. I think every country has been coming out with different packages. India, as I have to speak on the Indian roadmap ahead, India came with a lockdown on 25th March, when Prime Minister Modi ji announced that we will have a complete lockdown, because at that time the health preparedness of India with regard to PPE, face covers, this ventilators, sanitizers, all these things were being imported, and even the health facilities were not up to the level that is expected to meet such a big endemic. So immediately the only answer for the country was to go for a lockdown, go for preparedness on the health sector. So after 25th March, the initial phase, India came for with preparedness for all this PPE kit. And I would like to mention here that within this 2 months time, India has come to treat a lot of way over the preparedness on the healthcare system. Now we are preparing more the crores of face covers, homemade face covers and sanitized face covers. Then ventilators are being produced in India. Even this PPE kits, lakhs and lakhs of PPE kits are being produced now in India. And so many MSME sectors and many manufacturing sectors have come up on this sector, and India has now almost 1,000 units across India which is doing all this preparation, manufacturing all these PPE kits. So this is one area which has given a lot of opportunity for economic activity for our manufacturing units, and also build our strength on the health sector. Second important after this was for because there was a lockdown and economic activity came to a standstill. Many people, migrant labor, Pravasi Mazdoor, those who were across the country, it is said that around estimated that around 5 crore migrant laborers were there across the region, and they needed, because of the control, stoppage of economic activity, they need food, they needed food, shelter and other support from the government. So the first announcement after this was Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, and it was to the tune of 1,92,000 crores Indian rupee. They were, it was mostly direct fund transfer to the lower strata of the population below the lower pyramid, where they needed food, etc., and that direct benefit transfers, etc., was taken up. Over the last 5 6 years, India has built a good state capacity to deliver various social welfare schemes, which is based on Aadhaar and other things. When I came to Nepal, also I talked about various initiatives like Jandan account, and whole globally it is being recognized. The state capacity that over the year, this digital banking, direct benefit transfers, and targeted delivery of various social security schemes through technological driven innovations has helped targeted delivery of government social security schemes. So that was the second initiative, and after that, then came the third announcement of the RBI to give credit to the corporate sectors. That was very important because without credit, that sector could not work in this situation. And in the last phase, on the 12th May, when the economic activity with the government thought that now, though the epidemic has not been completely controlled, but still economic activity cannot be stopped any further, and we need to open with proper awareness, lot of awareness among the people, and preparation on the healthcare, this hospitals, etc., testing kits, testing of COVID cases, etc. All these facilities had been developed. So on 12th May, Prime Minister came out with an Atmanirbhar Bharat package. I'll just put some of the important, because of the time constraint. I'll just put that in India, now our foremost priority has been to start economic activity. And Prime Minister has put used this opportunity, this COVID crisis in itself has also and given certain opportunity that we build a robust healthcare system in the country. That is one lesson that we have learned, and I think most of the countries have learned it the hard way, that the healthcare expenditure, which is low in some developing countries, even India has a very low healthcare spend earlier. So that is required. A robust healthcare is required in all the developing countries. So this is one lesson that Nepal and India and other neighboring countries can learn from this. So we all have to build a strong healthcare infrastructure. Second is that we all have to build up a well social delivery state capacity on delivery of government welfare schemes. If that welfare schemes are not properly built and it is not targeted, and the needy people do not get the direct fund transfer, then there is lot of leakages and the time gap itself, then the crisis can further worsen up. So the third was the Atmanirbhar Bharat. India is trying to use this challenge as an opportunity for building so many reforms. That is the most important part, that the roadmap can be a lesson that India today also there are quite negative report on the economic front for India also, for the global economic recession also. But everybody is hopeful that over the next year, some countries, even as far as I am concerned for India, is that we may have a V-shaped recovery if the government takes strong reform measures. And on those basis, the government has launched certain reform measures like land reforms, land records are updated, even labor laws are required to be updated. Many labor laws were just held up because of certain problems of labor unions and the industries conflict, etc. So states are also going for labor reforms. Even on the factors of production. We in India are focusing strongly on factors of production, which can develop our manufacturing base. Over the last 70 years, what we have seen that India's manufacturing sector has not kept pace with the economic growth. We had a strong services sector growth, but a manufacturing sector could not keep pace with the growth, etc. So, therefore, we are trying to build an ecosystem of strong manufacturing base where global industries also can come to India and integrate our domestic industries into regional and global supply chain. This I would also like to put up as an opportunity for Nepal India relations also, because though we all 5 6 countries have a closed border, physical border, but that bilateral trade is not very much large in compared to our global share. It is only all this Myanmar, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Pakistan, and bilateral trade with China through border only constitutes, I was seeing one report, is $12 billion. It is minuscule, less than 2% of our trade. So, and in that, the highest trade with border with India and by neighboring countries is between India and Nepal. So, there are sufficient scope for Nepal industries to integrate into the supply chain with India, along with India to the regional supply chain, along with India to the global supply chain. Because at present, the whole manufacturing scenario across the world is some, even if you see small manufacturing product like mobile, etc., the screen is manufactured somewhere, cover is manufactured in a different country, battery is manufactured in another country, and then assembled in a third country and exported to another country. So there is an integration of global supply chain that India and other neighboring countries have to develop together. And when some people in India, I would like to also clarify is here is that some people are saying that Atmanirbhar Bharat means only Swadeshi movement, that we will not work for imported product or integrated global and regional supply chain. It is not like that. So when the Prime Minister talks about the local supply chain, he talks about the kirana shop and the local requirement that each district has. It has to fulfill. Large malls, etc., are closed, large industries are closed, so you have to depend upon your local supplier of food, vegetable, etc., and small services. So we should also care for your local supply chain. But at the national level and at the policy level, the regional supply chain for India is very important, and we want to integrate this regional supply chain with our neighboring countries so that we can all together act as a manufacturing hub for even large multinational companies. I have been talking, I am a chartered accountant, I have been talking through our Institute of Chartered Accountants across our colleagues in different countries. We had several seminars. Many countries are interested to shift base to different countries because they don't want to concentrate their manufacturing into single countries. But for that, we all have to create an ecosystem of hand holding, of lower interest rate, financial security, with Nepal and India and other countries, neighboring countries having democracy. We have an advantage. We have a transparent judiciary system. We have certain institutions. So robust, if we build robust financial ecosystem, we can attract global investment into integrating this regional supply chain. So manufacturing is the area where we all can see big growth. We all have been lagging behind in the manufacturing area. If we all together work towards creating a manufacturing hub with the this logistic integration of roads, railways, airways, transportation, power, because Nepal has a lot of potential on hydropower. So India is shortage of power. So this hydropower, this electric renewable energy can be purchased. So we need power. We need certain minerals also. So integrating this logistical and infrastructure issues together, this manufacturing hub can be developed. So manufacturing is the roadmap through which we can revive our economy altogether. For that, we need a level playing field, strong infrastructure of logistic infrastructure of power, road, railways. These has to be built. Then we need strong financial institutions of capital market, financial markets, bond market. India has a developed bond market. India has a developed equity market. India has a developed professionals. So on the knowledge economy, India has certain edge. But on the manufacturing side, these can be an additional benefit. So these has to be leveraged to go for a economic growth. We on this COVID, I think that we all have faced strong hindrance on challenge with regard to this migration labors. And I am in a UP, I am living in Noida. I have been interacting with UP government. Even not only interstate migration labor has been has created a challenge. Even many people, I have been interacting with DM in Noida and other places, from the embassy from Nepal also. Many working class people from Nepal also are staying in UP, Bihar, and other places also. So they were also facing problems. UP government has not discriminated. I talked to the DM and some other people in the government. They said that in helping the
Sir,
migration labor and etc. We
Gopal,
have
Gopal,
taken care.
sorry,
Yeah.
ma'am, we have an honor to have you here in this webinar. I was just watching you in the previous webinar that was related to the migration that I was listening you there. Uh, Lots of people are losing job, and mainly the female. If we see in the gender perspective, the vulnerable community, the size of the vulnerable community is expanded. In this situation, that how would you like to suggest the government to respond them, mainly the female and the vulnerable group, and also what they can do to effectively protect the lives of the people that they are losing their lives in the quarantine due to the lack of well management of the quarantine. Ma'am, over to you. Ma'am, your audio is muted.
Thank you so much, Pushparajji. Honorable Dr. Sharma, Honorable Dr. Agrawal, it's really an honor for me to be on this panel. And thank you. It was very interesting to listen to your enlightened deliberations. I would like to start by saying we live in a global village, and India and Nepal are the neighbors who live next door to each other. Saying this, I would like to acknowledge that both the analysis that has been done by both the distinguished speakers are very akin to each other, and looking at it from the gender lens, what I would like to reiterate is yes, the first investment has to be in the health sector. And like Dr. Agrawal said, maybe this is a time and opportunity for all our countries and all our governments to wake up and look at the health system in our countries. You know, the WHO and the global indicators have always said that you must spend at least 10% on the health sector. And as an activist on health and gender, for more than 2 decades, we have been lobbying for 10%. But even after, the new constitution of Nepal was written, in which health right is enshrined as is rights of women, the health budget has been consecutively dropping, and now it is less than almost only 5% till the last budget. This time, the budget has increased by 30%, but still, it is not in the systems. It is still just targeted at infrastructure development, such as putting in hospitals. That is not going to help us at the current moment. Though I know our webinar is very focused on the future, I would like to deal with it today. As a woman, I always think of how am I going to, boil the rice right now instead of when is the next meal going to come, in a way. So right now, the response that the government is giving, I'm like sorry to say because I'm in this Nepal India webinar is really like a tragedy unfolding. There has not been sufficient response, and okay, you can make plans and plans and plans, but if you cannot implement it, then what is the point of planning? There have been a lot of hawa miles, as we say. So right now, the need of the hour is already, because we are losing so many women to maternal mortality. All the gains we've made over the past 2 decades have suddenly plummeted. And if you look at this in the context of what happened in the Congo, when the Ebola epidemic took place, 3,500 people died from Ebola and 3,600 maternal deaths happened in the same time. In Nepal, there are two tragedies going on simultaneously. One is maternal death, where we are losing young women of reproductive age who are big contributors to our economy and society. And also, we are losing a lot of people to suicide. Suicide is a very, very sad statistic in any country. And Nepal looks like we are going to be on the map for suicide soon. And this has also been exacerbated because of the lockdown. People are feeling hopeless. They're not having access to. They don't know what's going to happen to their future. They're not. They're insecure about their jobs, their livelihood, and some of the people are very, very scared about Ebola. I mean, about the COVID-19 virus. Nobody is going on to national media. Our health personnel are like working day and night. There is nobody providing them with really good, statistics, data, or even counseling. So, if we are to make our populations feel, more equipped to fight immunity, I mean, to fight disease, they have to first feel immune. Immunity always starts from the mind. It starts from your body, of how your hormones are reacting. So, one thing that we need to do right now is to clear all the myths. There's so many things going on in WhatsApp and social media. I mean, it's crazy. So maybe the government should also come out with really, just, I mean, in Nepal, every time you phone Mr. Agrawal, there is a lady who's saying, wash your hand, do this, do that. But going beyond that and actually telling the people who have fear, who are in quarantine, who are already in isolation, that you're not all going to die. I think it has to be a start from there. The health system has to be revamped, and it is not going to be sufficient to put in hospitals, which are going to come maybe 1 year in the future. We must have this emergency response really ramped up. So that is one thing, and we can learn from our neighbors. I think India has done quite a good job of, I mean, it's the population is incomparable, but they have been good at response. And if we look at the Indian situation, looks like maybe in Nepal also maybe 2% deaths might occur if we get the response right. So one is that aspect. And of course, the brunt of it is that women are going to suffer. They are already suffering right now. And children are going to suffer as a consequence. When mothers die, it's not only the child, the newborn baby who might survive, but who might die very soon. But others in a family will also get, they might get exploited, they might get trafficked, they will have less access to education, and the overall environment of a home is destroyed. So this is a challenge that our government will have to respond to pretty quick. And also in this, I would also like to touch upon the whole issue of education. What are we going to do with these millions of children who are out of school? How are our governments going to respond to education? I know both in India and Nepal, we have a private sector education, we have community education, and we have government sector education. Are all the citizens from different categories going to have differential access to education forever? I'm involved in the private sector, but I'm just filling in a gap. If the government sector education was good, we would not have private sector schools. So maybe this is again an opportunity to use all the IT knowledge we have, all the human resources we have in IT. A lot of our youth are very well equipped to, do distant education, to go to prepare online education. So governments need to wake up and say, maybe pandemics like this are going to be there more and more in the future. maybe due to climate change, maybe due to the fact that people are so mobile, will still be traveling in the future. So all these new challenges that maybe the bureaucracy and all the politicians in all our countries, including me, I'm also pretty old, are all old, and we are looking at history only to guide us. But we must look at the current context. We've seen Ebola, we've seen SARS, we've seen other coronaviruses, take up parts of the world. Now we have this coronavirus, which is staring everybody in the face all over the world. So, how is the current government going to respond to that? Whether it is the government in Nepal, the government in India, our two governments together, or the whole world? And when I think of the health systems of India and Nepal, we are very interdependent. Mostly, the Nepalese are dependent on India for like for the any complicated health services, because Indian institutions and Indian education in medicine has been has a longer history. Nepal is also catching up, but we still need to have that kind of exchange. And if we are going to look at how to deal with Ebola from a health system point of view, from a public health system point of view, then we must do it together, because our borders are porous, and it is always going to remain so. No matter what politics there might be in this part of the world, there will always be Nepalese and Indians who will want to go into each other's countries, because we are part of a big civilization. So I always have a very civilizational aspect about India. We have to work together, whether it's health, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's transportation, and the interdependency that we have. It's just a matter of geography. It's not that Nepal is helpless and can't do anything. We are a landlocked nation, and there are certain things that landlocked nations cannot do. And India has been cooperating with us since times immemorial, allowing the ports to be used, getting in the gas pipelines for us. So how do we fulfill this trade deficit we have with India? Because if Nepal is to challenge itself in the future, and if we are going to sink more and more into debt and poverty, we have to be in a good shape in the neighborhood. Otherwise, we can never come out of it. So this is, I mean, just, I mean, I'm not an economist. This is just my common sense knowledge of a woman who has to manage a house.
Ma'am,
I don't know if.
ma'am, sorry for the interruption. You have well highlighted about the human development challenges and the situation that we are facing now is the gains that we have achieved in the past are plummeting. As you are the leader of Nepali Congress, the main opposition, that could you please briefly talk about the role of Nepali Congress in during this crisis and beyond?
Well, our Nepali Congress Party has, since day one, since the government said, okay, we have a disaster, and there was a call for support from, all the non-government sectors to support the Prime Minister's Fund. I think Nepali Congress Party was the first, group, at least the only political group that I know of. I don't think even the Prime Minister's Party deposit funds, but we deposited, in good faith, a large number of money for a Nepali party. It was just 50 lakhs, but that's a lot of money for a Nepali political party in the Prime Minister's Fund, because we thought, okay, this is a big national crisis, and it hadn't really already become one, but we could see the symptoms of that. So we told the government, we will support you in everything you do. Please respond fast, because pandemic means like, so I had read somewhere, it said in the beginning, before the real thing starts, it looks like you're doing too much, and once the pandemic starts, nothing is going to be sufficient. So now, because of the mishandling of the entire response by the government, now Nepal is really, I am like really worried that we are sitting in the middle of an unfolding tragedy. It looks like a comedy of errors, very Shakespearean. We've had like some purchases made, corruption cases. The whole thing was exposed by the media, thanks to you guys. It came out in the media. It was substandard. It was highly priced. The government said, okay, we won't do it. Then they gave it to the army, and yesterday again, it's like that, like in front of international audience, that even that purchase didn't seem to be all on above board. So, and the responses, that the government is giving has been a point of big criticism for the Nepali Congress Party. We have been saying at least do 300,000 PCR tests. Till date, I looked at the statistics yesterday, we have not even done 100,000. Is our government so badly managed? Do we have such less resources that we can't even do 300,000 tests? Because only the PCR tests will be able to really isolate people who are infected by the disease. I mean, I'm not an expert, but that's what WHO is saying. WHO is saying don't use RDT tests; it will mislead you, and those tragedies are unfolding now. In my own district, one lady was, she came to do delivery. She was tested with RDT. They said she's fine. They did the delivery. After a few days, she died, and the PCR test showed that she was positive. Now there is this whole chain of 400 people who went for a funeral, who needs to be contact traced. They need to be, looked at. Their tests need to be done, and we still don't have PCR kits. I mean, the machines as well. So, Nepali Congress yesterday took out a very strong comment to the government that, you all have failed, and these are the things you need to do, including, bringing more accountable, more transparent purchase agreements. And we have also, put up a focal point and a committee in our party to look at each and every step of what the government is doing, because it looks like the trust we had in this government, which has almost two-thirds in parliament, has been, wrongly placed. We are very sorry to say, we are all like people from the same society and, from the same country. So we trusted them to at least, respond with alacrity, with good sense, with humanness to this crisis, but they have not done so. So our party's point of view is now very, very critical of the government, and we are trying our best to tell them, please wake up and smell the coffee. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. In the next round, I will come back to you, and for the next round, the question is regarding Nepal-India relations. How Nepal and India can work together to cope up with this crisis, and how they can work together to revive the economy in the short period of time. Now, I will come to Mr. Agrawal. That he has elaborated that how India has curved the graph of the COVID cases and going to reopen the economy. As India is the vast populous country, after reopening of the economy, what sort of challenges that you could face, and do you think that the healthcare and safety protocol that developed by the government of India, that will be educated properly?
I think these are the two important things you have asked. One thing is that what is the challenge if the India is going for opening up the economy? The first and foremost challenge that we are finding, I have contact with industrialists and other people we have discussed, is that there is no demand in the economy. We have to generate a demand. So then this in itself gives a lot of opportunity for trades also, because manufacturing sector or any industry will only come up when there is demand. So how to generate demand is a big challenge, and for that the only way that any government can support this is that government has to go for large scale liquid infusion into the whole ecosystem, and the government has to find out ways so that money is transferred to the people, whether directly through bank account transfer as has been done at in some cases in fiscal stimulus package, or through spending of the government in various building infrastructure, etc. But building infrastructure at this time, it seems that because of the low labor availability and the isolation, the COVID, post-COVID, or this COVID crisis protocols, it has become slightly costlier. So any infrastructure built in this point of time will put an additional cost to the economy. So at present, slightly for 6 months, this infrastructure development can wait. One thing that we have learned is that we have to work more on spending and coming out with money transfer to the people common, to the common man more and more through various direct benefit transfer way, or as we have done in taking up agriculture reforms or MSME sector credit availability, etc. These are the important issues that we have to work on. Liquidity has to be infused. And another lesson that we have learned the hard way is that for migration labor, we need to build strong infrastructure at the site of the manufacturing or construction area. Wherever we develop cluster development for manufacturing or site for infrastructure development, the migration labor has a very poor living condition. So that has to be a part of the project itself, that they get proper sanitation, healthcare, stay facilities, etc. Because this migration labor which has gone back to its native place, it will now find it difficult for we will find it difficult for to bring them back. So if we have to build up a better infrastructure for their state, this I would like to tell you one example of Ayushman Bharat has been has been highly successful, this healthcare insurance. Because I think Dr. Arjuji and Dr. Sharma also told about that all countries will have to build up a strong healthcare infrastructure, but that government alone cannot have that capacity to build this infrastructure of healthcare. We have to attract some certain private investment, PPE model and etc. India in itself is also finding its healthcare infrastructure gap, and therefore to attract private investment, we think this Ayushman Bharat scheme providing 5 lakh healthcare insurance to the needy people has benefited a lot. More than a crore people have benefited over this period through this crisis and earlier also. And even this is also helping attract private investment into this healthcare, building primary health center, building small nursing homes, building small hospitals, etc., which are eligible for this Ayushman scheme. So primary health centers and village health facilities can be helped through Ayushman Bharat. One more thing that I would like to share with you is the experience of our this PPE kit manufacturing whole facility was given to the textile ministry, and textile ministry has done good work that now at current time we are manufacturing crores and crores of PPE kit and different items on the PPE kit, whether it is face covers or this PPE sanitized PPE kits, etc. And this manufacturing has given lot of opportunities also for the thing. Migration labor I have thought that we now are in UP particularly, we are focusing on this building migration labor units, and technology building state capacity is very important. And use of technology, whether it is artificial intelligence or whether it is big data or whether it is digital economy, if we do not have Arogya Setu, it was done in a very fast mode, and but it contact tracing and this Arogya Setu has benefited a lot. So these kind of technological innovation through startup, etc., it is very good. We have to build these kind of solutions also. I think that's very important. Arogya Setu is one important area that we can work on. And empowerment of women, I completely agree with Dr. Aju that empowerment of women can take place through their financial empowerment. The money in the hands of women will create a good good work for the women, and through that only the society can work. So our focus on microfinancing, in this schemes, agriculture sector, India is experimenting on two areas which can be emulated in Nepal also, is about the farmers producers organization and aggregators. Government has come out with beautiful guidelines on this focus, because cooperatives sector, farmers working in a cooperative ecosystem, there is a political connotation. But if they build this farmer producer organization and aggregators, some tax concessions have been provided to them, holding is given to them. So what India is looking for post COVID economic scenario is a time frame of 6 months to 1 year or 2 years. There, the whole, if you look into the major part of our economic package, it focuses on revival of the economy over a period of 6 to 2 years, 3 years. So there is one of the important focus where I think we can work on, and we are also developing on the skilling of the people, because skill mapping is very important. We people Employment is a problem for all, most of the this eastern region countries, SAARC countries, etc. We have large population, but employment generation is low. But so at the point of time, this employability of the people is also important. So skilling of the workers population is also an initiative that the government is taking. Whether in UP, I know we are building up softwares where all the data bank of the workers is to be put, what is his skill, how much is educated, what is his living standard, and which are the areas where he can work. Self-help groups are also working, women self-help group, microfinance, there we will also focus. So these are some of the things that I think are an example where we can work together. And this balance of payment, I know, is a skewed towards Indian side, and the import of what I think is the electric power is one area. What I have understood, I had worked in one Northeast Electric Power Company which was working on hydropower. So I had attended one program also in Nepal on the hydropower. Bhutan has done very good arrangement with India. India going for PPA for power purchase, and they are producing lot of hydropower. It is small dams can help build up hydropower. And this transportation, I went to Birganj, that integrated check post. This kind of transportation infrastructure is also very important for building up the supply chain. So we can work on them on the areas, and even on agriculture sector, commodities in food processing, and some certain value addition at the farmers level can help the farmers at one point, and also bring value to the agriculture sector, which can contribute to the export from Nepal. I think these points will help
Thank you, sir.
integrate our
Thank you.
economy.
To request Mr. Agrawal for your concluding remarks.
Thank you, Pushparaji. I think it has been a very good learning and lot of knowledge sharing experience with Dr. Shankar Sharma ji and Dr. Arju ji. And it also gave me certain opportunities before coming to this program. I talked to some people in the MEA and MHA also. And it all, by the way, it gave me opportunity to learn more about India, Nepal. I have been several times to visit to Pashupati Nath also and other places. And I have an affinity for mountains and Himalayas, even Mansarovar. Also, I went to Nepal only. So Himalayas is a great attraction for me. And the religious, as Dr. Arju also talked about, the affinity of people of Nepal and India on religious basis, cultural basis, is a big important thing. The 5 points, small, briefly, I'll mention that first thing is that Dr. Sharma talked about the logistic issues. India has come out is facing certain challenges on the surface transport, etc. So India has announced a national logistical policy, where by 2022 we want to reduce the cost of transportation to by 40%. So that is a huge amount, and I think by 2020 that is a targeted approach which always Shri Narendra Modi ji takes for, and we have targeted that our overall logistic transport, surface transport, etc. cost is reduced by 40% by 2022. We are working on that, and I think your corridor issue has been brought about earlier also, that Calcutta port should have a direct link to Veerganj or to Nepal. Will also work on that. Second thing is bilateral. As far as India is concerned, we over the year we have seen that the bilateral relation and international diplomacy have become more important than multilateral relations, because the multilateral bodies sometimes even complicate the whole issue, because there are certain ancient concern that, as has been mentioned, that India and Nepal share lot of things culturally, socially, religiously. So the same thing cannot be talked about with Pakistan or other country. Malaysia, we have certain differences. All those things are quite different. So multilateral platforms sometimes complicate. And now we, under Modi ji, over the last 6 years, I have been to various countries across the globe, even China, USA, Malaysia, all these places, and Nepal also. I've seen that he is focusing, our government is focusing more on bilateral relations, and that also improves our relation. That has also come out from our panelists here, so we will also work on that. The third thing is that for Nepal, I think everybody in India, I have met several people, they want to go to Pashupati Nath temple. So that cultural type, Nepal people want to come to Kashi Vishwanath temple and other temples. So this and tourism or activity or working there, this can be more, I think, more leveraged with certain, if Nepal builds more this hospitality industry, and this thing, this will also help. And Indian people are very much interested to visit Nepal. Earlier everybody used to go to Nepal for their holidays. So this is one area where more can be done. And the fourth thing that I would like to mention here, just to pinpoint here out of the discussion, is India has leveraged its diaspora across many countries over some period of time. Nepal has lot of diaspora people in India, and they are very well respected, whether it is in the army and other places also. There are several examples where we have respect for them. So that diaspora can further be leveraged, because in a democracy, public opinion is very important, certain decisions. This was the fourth point that I wanted to mention. On the fifth, I have sent that the migration, there are many people from the migration labor or working force from Nepal. This labor reform or keeping them proper facility at the places is part of our policy in the future also. And one thing I would like to mention is that during this COVID crisis also, one ration, one nation card, there was no discrimination, at least for UP, about whether you are domiciled in UP or you are from domiciled anywhere in the India, or even from outside neighbor countries. We were trying to provide dry ration to everybody who was in need without having a ration card on a temporary form basis. So that thing. And another thing that we focused on, that all embassies, Nepal embassy in India has a very strong access to all the district magistrate directly without going through the MEA. This I talked to the ministry also. I was informed that they can directly contact. Ministry has this embassy has been talking directly to the embassy, this district magistrate, about that problems, and we are, if somebody is facing. So this kind of special relation, I think, is very important. And Prime Modi ji also first visit was to Nepal. So I think this seminar today will also help people to people connect, which is already there, for establishing good relations. As a for a country, as people of India, as a government, we extend very large respect or relationship conditions for Nepal. We look forward for a good and healthy relations and mutually beneficial relationship. That India cannot progress. That also we understand. India cannot progress unless we have the support of our neighboring countries in our growth path. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Agrawal, for your kind words. Now, I would like to request uh, Dr. Arju Rana Deva for concluding remarks. Then I will wrap up.
In conclusion, I don't have really much to say except that I'm really very happy to be on this panel. I hope you all organize more panels like this, so there can be more learning and more exchanges. And I think it's very important that somebody who's highly placed in the Indian government, because I know Mr. Agrawal is an economic advisor, and he's very keenly listened to by all those who run India. That this sort of exchanges, I think, directly, puts the issues to people who are thinking about, Indian Nepal relationships. And it's very important that, we have this kind of access rather than just through media, rather than just hearsay. So these kind of exchanges are very, very important to us. And I think it just reiterates the closeness of our relationship, that we could get Mr. Agrawal on a webinar like this, and we could just come, as like ordinary private citizens and sit on a webinar with him, which I think even a lot of Indian citizens will find difficult to stay with such a highly placed personnel. So that just shows the closeness and the sensitiveness of our relations. But also at the same time, the king who established Nepal, I don't know, Mr. Agrawal, if you've heard this, he said, Nepal is a yam between two big rocks. So the two big rocks are China and India, and we are the poor yam, So we can't really push this way or that way. We have to be very static. So I hope you all understand, the nature of who we are. We are a very proud race, because, as you know, we fought with the British, we fought with everybody. We fought with all the powers that were in this continent. We fought with the Mughals, the British, the Chinese, the Tibetans, everybody. But we said, okay, we'll not give up who we are. So we are a very proud race in a very small land. And of course, actually our geographical size is not that small. But when you look at India and China, we just, we are smaller than one of your provinces in both the countries. So, the sensitiveness of Nepalese as a race, the sensitivity of, each and every Nepali, and, the sensitivity of being a small nation in a large neighborhood is something that, I hope you all will understand, because this, colors sometimes very badly a lot of the things that could have been settled very easily. So saying this, of course, track 2 diplomacy is very important, but also for Indian officials to understand that, what is Nepal, what is the psyche of the Nepalese people is as important, because we might have so many excellent exchanges, but as you know, human communications is so sensitive. You need to just say one bad word. You can do 100 good deeds, but one bad word, and that's it. And there might be mistakes, and there have been mistakes, over the years on both the sides. I won't say anyone is perfect at any point of time, but we have overcome all these issues. And now at this very urgent, juncture of human history, where nobody has faced, like crisis like this, the whole world is in a tizzy. We don't know who can even come in to help each other. And we look at each other as, good neighbors. Okay, maybe, our neighbor is going to be the best one who will help us. So from both sides, I think, these gestures, these ventures are important. And if we are to pull together as South Asia, everyone says this is the time of the South Asians, and the South Asians are progressing. And we do feel happy to see, South Asia is doing very well. India is doing so well. Bangladesh is doing so well. And, these countries are progressing. I was looking at Global Gap Index, and Bangladesh is number 50. I was like surprised, and I was amazed to see what achievements they have done. So, this neighborhood is a very interesting neighborhood. This neighborhood has the youngest population in the world. This neighborhood has the biggest human resources and the most potential. How can we use it to the best of our benefits? And like Dr. Shankar Sharma said, India is the dynamo in this South Asian continent, the whole of South Asia. India is the dynamo, and if you can rev up your machine a bit more, I think we would all do very well in the future. And as a older person, and especially as a mother, I want to see a very good future for the next generation of people. I don't want to see them sick, frustrated, hating each other. I think we have to inculcate a culture of peace, a culture of living together, and a culture of making the pie bigger. Not cutting up the small roti into tiny bits, but making a large roti. So I hope, I think these messages have resonated very well in today's discussion. And thank you so much for being here with us. And thank you so much, Pushpaji, for organizing this excellent deliberation. Thank you and namaste. Jai Nepal.
Thank you,
My
ma'am.
pleasure.
We have discussed almost half an hour. And I would like to extend my sincere thanks to our chief guest, Mr. Gopal Krishna Agrawal, for his valuable presence and important deliberations in this webinar, and also to Dr. Arju Rana Deuba, leader of the main opposition Nepali Congress, for her valuable time, and Dr. Sharma, seasoned economist and former Vice President of National Planning Commission, and also Nepali ambassador to the United States, for your valuable time. With this, on behalf of Center for Democracy and Development, I would like to extend my heartiest thanks to all of you again, and I would like to wrap up this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. We will be in touch. Thank you.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah.